Hey, artistic humans, Paul Sizer here again, back from the depths of Cafe Digital Studios and Sizer Design and Illustration. And today we're going to be talking about human form. So, in the previous two videos that I've talked with you about, we've gone over ideas about creating forms that are geometric, and then we talked about making forms that are based on more organic shapes. And so now that leads perfectly into drawing how humans are built and how we can use forms and use the things that we've talked about with making volumetric shapes, with making complex forms out of combinations of simple shapes, and bringing those things all together with the proportions and the sketching ability to be able to modify and create human forms. So, as I've said with all the videos, I'm showing you stuff digitally, but it is absolutely not anything that you can't do with a paper and a pencil. So I would encourage you that if you're watching this video, feel free to draw along. If you're using digital stuff, go for it. But everything that I'm showing you here is just good basic information that any artist should know, and you should be able to do with literally the simplest equipment that you can find. So if you've got a pencil and you've got a piece of paper, you're good to go on this. So let's go ahead and get drawing here. So as we've discussed before in some of the previous videos, most complex shapes are things that can be broken down into simple shapes. So I'm going to talk a little bit today initially about how the human head and face are constructed as kind of a basic starting point. And with anything that we're showing you, I'm going to be doing sketching today, so I'll be working on my pencil layer here in Manga Studio. But the idea behind this is that the sketching that I'm doing is going to be loose. We'll be refining things, we'll be changing things, and I'm not worried about getting a perfect drawing first thing out of the pencil. The whole idea for sketching is that we're going to be playing around with stuff, altering and adapting things. And since we're drawing this kind of from the ground up, this will be a good way for you to be able to see that you can customize the work that you're doing, that you can correct mistakes, that you can address things like proportions or just different attributes and really make this work your own. So everybody starts out by copying and taking a look at how other people do things, but the foundational stuff that I'm showing you in these videos are going to give you lots of leeway to be able to make your own stuff and to make exactly the shapes and sizes, proportions, feel, look, attitude of characters that you want, being able to give them the visual identity that you have in mind, so they don't look like cookie cutters, that they look like individuals, people that people who are looking at them could connect with. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of, I'm going to do a face shot here, and so I'll just kind of explain as I'm drawing along so that I'm not just a talking head, so you can watch. As I've said before, if you want to, go ahead and draw along with me. Take notes. Artists always take notes by drawing, so please, as you're watching this video, sketch along, and let's go from there. All right. So every time that I start to draw a human head, I'm always going to start out with pretty much the two simple shapes that most human heads are built out of. And I've decided that for today's demo, I'm going to draw the lead character from my second graphic novel, Simone, and I'm going to have her face be sort of the starting point that I'm going to talk with you about basic ideas on constructing a head, constructing the proportions of a face, and how to go ahead and customize this stuff. So the base idea behind the human skull is always going to start out with a circle, or more accurately, a sphere. So let me go ahead and just kind of start out here with a spherical shape. And as we started off in the first video, when I say circles, when I say squares, rectangles, and things like that, we're not really going necessarily for geometric precision. We're going for what a circle is, what a basic rectangle is, what a triangular shape is, a sphere, a cylinder, that kind of stuff. So the preciseness of this really isn't that important until we begin refining this down. So the main portion of a skull is always a large circular shape that will become a sphere. And then the bottom part of the shape, stylistically, I always kind of view this as kind of a modified triangle or trapezoid. Um, when I'm drawing shapes, usually, especially with say like a female form like this, a little bit more of an angular shape. And I'm going to be drawing something that's going to be at kind of a 3/4 view. So we'll talk about how when you're drawing these shapes, because we're drawing them as geometric shapes, we'll be able to move them around, be able to rotate them, and make them work like that. So I'm going to go ahead and start out with a kind of a 3/4 view of this. So I'm not looking straight at the face, but I'm looking at it about a 30, 45-degree angle or so. And so the top part of the head starts out with circle, bottom part, sort of a modified triangle, modified trapezoid type shape. For the jaw, we'll adjust this a little bit. Usually for female characters, I will tend to have a little bit smoother or a little bit more tapered angle to this. If this was a male character or a character that was more muscled or more like stocky build, I might have a more angular jaw that might be a little more square at the bottom, might be a little more blocky or heavier or have more weight at the bottom. But for Simone's face, she has a fairly slender face. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to be blocking out and positioning and doing what we talked about in some of the previous videos. I'm going to map some lines to this contour of the face, and those lines will be a starting point for where we can begin to take a look at where things are going to place on the face. So as a general rule, with a human face, a human face is generally symmetrical, meaning that it's split equidistant. It's kind of what happens on one side happens on the other side, so it's a symmetrical form. So once we establish kind of the center line of the face, we can kind of mimic what we do on one side to another side. So because we've got a 3/4 view here, things that are on this side of the face are going to be a little bit larger, and things that are on the away side of the face will be a bit smaller. But we're going to try and kind of, again, balance it out so that what we have over here is what we have over here. And you've probably seen this before where people will split a face. But this initial line that I'm drawing here, that's going halfway through, you notice that it's not necessarily a straight line that I'm drawing. I'm mapping it along the surface contour of that top sphere and mapping it across the front of the face so that it comes down to the base of the chin, but wraps around the top of the skull and tapers and follows the contour of that skull. So the general rule of thumb is that on a skull, from top to bottom, your eyes are about halfway from the top of your skull to the base of your chin. So your eyes land about halfway through. So on here, I'm going to sort of, again, like looking at this, as if I'm looking at the front of the face, from here to here, this area right here is pretty much going to be kind of that central area. So I'm going to go ahead and just block kind of a guideline for myself of where that where those eyes are going to go. And again, I'm tapering this so that it goes along the contour of the face. So between the eye line, and we'll go ahead and we'll just call that's our eye line. So we'll put E there. Halfway between your eye line and your chin is about the base of where a nose will fit. So I'm going to take a look from here to here and find about halfway, and that's going to be kind of my nose line. That's going to be where that nose will fall. And then halfway between the base of the nose and the chin is roughly where the mouth is going to go. So again, we'll put an M there for mouth. Now again, depending on the face that you're drawing, a person's features may be a little bit more spread out. They may be a little more compressed. You might have the eyes and the nose and the mouth very tight together. They maybe have a longer face, and maybe those things are spread out a little bit. But this is a good general rule of thumb. So again, since we're doing this sketching and setting up this infrastructure, you've got the opportunity to be able to customize this stuff and move things apart, closer together, and see how that looks, see how it makes the face look. If it's going to be kind of a scrunched up face or somebody who has very far apart eyes, and you can determine, does that make them look more mysterious? Does it make them look more creepy? Does having the features all together make them have a certain attitude? Does having things spread out and kind of unnaturally far apart, how does that make them feel? Does it make them feel weird or otherworldly, or does it make them feel accurate to what you want to draw? So we've got kind of the general base idea of how things are going here. So once again, as I'm starting to block things out, I'm always going to start out with very simple shapes. So let's go ahead and we've got our eye line here. I'm going to start out first with the nose because the nose is kind of something that the rest of these things all kind of base on. It's sort of dead center in the face. And most people's noses are going to be kind of a modified triangle. So let's go ahead and view up a little bit on that so we can see it. So I'm going to go ahead and just sort of block in a triangle area. Now obviously a nose has a little bit more of this, so if you really take a look at somebody's nose, what you'll notice is that most people's nose are going to have a round section for the tip of the nose, and then you'll have two round areas that taper off of that for the nostrils. So just to sort of start out, I'm going to go ahead and give myself a little bit of a circle shape here, and then I'm going to go ahead and just make kind of two ovals to the side for the side nostrils of the nose. And again, you see that we're modifying that shape. We're making that shape look a little bit more like it's dimensional. That's feeling. Again, this is just a starting point. We'll go ahead and erase away unnecessary lines, but this gives us a good starting point. So again, the nose is kind of dead center in the face, and then what I'm going to do is from here, from the top of the nose, is where the connection of the tops of your eyebrows are. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself just some guidelines here. Simone's face. And then beneath that is going to be your eye. Now an eye is, I usually will start out with eyes being kind of modified oval shapes. But you can see that if I'm doing these as ovals, it's not a flat oval, it's one that I'm turning slightly because the face is on an angle. So I'm going ahead and modifying those ovals. And I'm going to go ahead and just leave that kind of there. Again, I'm placing this basic stuff, and we'll go back and do a little bit more detail work after this. So again, the same thing here is that with Simone's mouth, I think I'm actually going to, let me go ahead and erase that out. And I want to have her mouth a little, just a little bit closer to the base of her. And when I say mouth, what I'm looking at here is I'm looking that this line is indicating, say, the opening of her mouth. It's not her lips, top or bottom lips, or anything like that. So I'm just kind of, again, figuring out where I want to have this person's face. Now, basically, your mouth, if you're taking a look at this, proportionally, your mouth kind of is as wide as the center of your eyes. So again, if I'm taking a look at this, a person's mouth generally goes out to about that ratio right there. Again, depending on the expression, if somebody has a very wide smile, their mouth is going to be open and wider. If they have pursed lips and kind of a tight expression, your mouth is going to be obviously a lot smaller. It all depends on what you're doing, but this is again just kind of a general pose for this. So I'm going to go ahead and just start blocking in the idea of her lips here. And again, not trying to, making a decision about how I want to, the amount of detail that I want to have in these lips. Are these lips that have lipstick on them? Are they very well defined? Are they more naturalistic? Are they full lips? Are they very thin lips? Simone's face, she has a very full mouth and very full lips. And I can also take a look and say she also has kind of a little bit of a wider and a flatter nose. So these are all things again that I'm adapting to make her look like I want her to look. She is African American, so I want to make facial features that indicate that, and that have the shape of a nose that is what I have planned for the character. So she has little softer edge of a nose, a little bit of a wider nose, and she has a nice full mouth and lips, so that those can go along with establishing her identity and the look of her face. So again, I'm going to go ahead and these are all just again guidelines, and I can make decisions about how these lips are going to go that will determine the shape of the mouth, the expression that's on her face. So as I'm plotting out general things, and that's actually a good keyword here, and what I'll say is that for all the drawings that we're doing, the idea that we're doing is always to work from general to specific. So when I'm drawing a human figure, the first thing I'm doing is not drawing fingernails and each individual strand of hair. I'm working as general shape, getting general form, general proportion, general ideas of where things are, and having that, and then working from those general things, getting those placed, getting those solved and all, placed where I want them, proportionally where I want to have them, size-wise where I want to have them. And then I can work on, is there an earring in that ear? Is there a nose ring in that nose? How does this person's eyelashes, how does this person's facial features, that kind of stuff work? So as I'm just kind of plotting stuff out, again with this eye line that travels here, that shows the center of the lines, if I wrap that line around the contour of the head, this is going to give me an indication of where her ear is going to fall on her head. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of block in a general, kind of an oblong shape for where that ear is going to go, and I'll go ahead and refine the shape of that ear a little bit, in just a bit. But for this kind of thing, again, I'm just beginning to lay out where things are, where this is in proportion to the head, where these things are going to go. But I'm always refining too, and so again, I'm taking a look at saying, like, I want to make sure that her chin, as I'm modifying those base shapes, she has a very very full and round face. She's generally smiling, so she has nice cheeks that indicate a happy expression most times. So again, I'm rounding things up. I'm just doing refinements as I begin drawing on here. So let's go ahead and view out just a second here. And so yeah, that's looking pretty good so far, just for the head. So again, we have our symmetrical stuff. And I can begin to start to determine, again with the shapes, what I'm seeing from the three-quarter view that I'm looking at here, and what I want to do. So let's go ahead and we're going to take a little bit of a look at her hair. And this is going to be something where we'll again be modifying shapes that start out with geometric shapes, but the Simone character has kind of braided hair that goes down into is braided into dreadlocks. So the idea behind it is that what she has is very thick kind of dreads, which would be sort of translated as a tube or a cylinder type shape, that go from her head and then fall along her the side of her head. And so again, we're going to be doing mapping here. We're going to be doing out, if I'm planning out where her hair is going to be, I might do that thing where I sort of start out with lines that I'm going to extrude from the center out to produce the lines to produce cylinder shapes. So if I'm doing that, and generally I have her hair kind of pulled back from her forehead so that it goes along her head and falls. Now this might be sort of odd for you to hear a guy who has as much hair as I do to be trying to talk with you about how hair works. But that being said, I just have to know because I'm a professional. But we can see that the lines that I'm extending for her hair, they are following the contour of the head. So again, they're mapping along the shape of her head. And that is a visual clue that it is following the contour of the skull. and it's giving the viewer an idea that this is not a flat shape, that this is a shape that has volume, and that these lines are following that volume and becoming shapes and forms that we're going to extrude into dimensional shapes. So like I said, with this, as I'm starting to draw these shapes, these are just lines, and then from around those lines, I can kind of expand those lines out, like go from the center point and expand them out. So if I'm drawing her dreadlocks, you can see that I'm using, again, sort of thinking about those as cylinder shapes so that they have a rounded end, but they're starting out from that central point and following around. So as I'm thickening these shapes up, you can see that and again, when I was creating this character and working with the people who helped me to design her, I specifically talked with people who either had a hairstyle like this and got reference photos so that I could see how the hair laid on their head, style-wise, how they styled that hair, how it was controlled, with either being pulled back or put into a scarf, or just whatever stylistic way that they wore their hair. So in anything, if you're drawing stuff that is different than what you know or different than what you see, always research stuff. Always take the time to investigate and learn more about what you're drawing, because that's going to make it so that you're not just guessing at stuff that's easy for you to go ahead and check out and to take a look at with other people around you. And it's good for you to learn how to, again, be observational as an artist, so that you're not just drawing in a vacuum. That if you want to draw somebody who looks a certain way, find somebody who looks that way. Study how that look is. Study how they accessorize, how they dress, how they wear their hair, how they wear makeup, how they present themselves. All those things are going to be able to make your character more genuine and more true and more identifiable for somebody who's seeing them and can connect with them. And so it's a little bit of extra work, but that's the work that you need to do to be able to make stuff that's meaningful or more true to being accurate. And that will make the people who read your stuff connect. So yeah. So I drew in where Simone's ear is, and so some of her dreadlocks kind of extend around the ear and kind of hook behind it, but some of them also go in front. So I'm going to determine like kind of how much of this is actually going to be seen, how much of her ear is going to be seen, or how much will be covered up by hair. So we're taking a look at this, and because she's got her hair pulled back, the starting point of most of the braids that she has in her dreads are going to be fairly high on the forehead. So generally, when I would draw Simone in the book, she was wearing some manner of a headscarf or something that she would wrap around the top of her head to sort of tie down or to control the dreads so that they went where she wanted, or to kind of pull them back like a hair tie. So the same thing is that what I'm going to do here is in this planning stage, and let's go ahead and go. I'm going to go ahead and say that she would usually make that headscarf pull, she would tie it low and then kind of have it go up and around her forehead here. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to kind of, again, map where that scarf would go. And generally, let's go ahead. Let's say that this would be something that she would kind of have on the front. So maybe it would be kind of covering up her forehead. So all this stuff would be covered up by the scarf. So let me go ahead and just kind of erase that away. So we're not losing anything by doing this. We're just refining so that we can see we can do the under planning, and then when we put something over it, then we know that we've kind of got that everything's kind of making sense that's working beneath it here. So I'm going to go ahead and have it that this scarf would kind of tie behind, like go over her ears and kind of tie low on her neck. So the tie of it would be under this the rest of the headscarf, and then the rest of her dreads would just come out the back of that and then fall down along her back of her head and her shoulders. So yeah. So I've got that. So it's still following the contour of her head, so we can still see that. And there might be something where she might have a few kind of stray tiny braids or dreads that might just sort of pop out along the front there. Now she also Simone also wears glasses. So as we're planning out the face here, since we've got our base areas where everything is going, I do know that now what I can do is I can sort of plot out where those glasses are. So she has kind of, I would say, rounded rectangle glasses, kind of like sort of horn-rimmed glasses. So they're kind of equally thick. Well, they're kind of like what I'm wearing here. So I'm going to go ahead and place them on her face. So they're going to rest on her nose like my glasses do, and then extend out to her eyes and past her eyes, and then we'll hook with the side hooks here that go and hook behind your ears. And again, I'm just going to kind of place that out. So if I'm talking about something where if her glasses are kind of shaped like this, I'm going to take that flat shape and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move it in space. So put those flat rectangles into perspective so that they lay against the same plane that her glasses would lay on her face here. So I'm going to alter that and kind of plan that out here with her shape of her face, and that those two rounded rectangles so again they are parallel with each other. So again, in perspective, these are parallel here, these are parallel here. And then I'm also placing them, and because I've got my guidelines here, then the part that goes over the ear here, I know that I've got the right placement, so when I extend that line back, you see it going behind her ear. And I would see that same thing over here, and that'd be hidden by the base of her, or the back of her, outside of her face rather. Okay. All right, so we've got kind of a base idea here of how this face is going. We've taken a look at how this works. We have a basic place where everything is laying. And as we're doing this, let me go ahead and just sort of, I'm going to erase away, just kind of get rid of some extraneous lines. We've got stuff that that I've used for just kind of plotting stuff out. I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. These are, like I said, this is not a perfect drawing, and this is not, there's a ton of lines here that I'm not going to necessarily use, but I am kind of going to get rid of extraneous lines, and I'll go back and add a few things in here. But with the sketch thing, I still, as I said before, I like to kind of keep my sketch lines available because, again, they're reference points, they're things, they're the underlying infrastructure that I've laid down, so I can refer back to them if I have to have new things. But I've got plenty of stuff here that I kind of have a good idea of where my guidelines are, so I can kind of just do a little bit of cleanup here, just kind of get away from some shapes and forms that I used to lay down the basics and now really don't perhaps need as much. Okay. So yeah, let's just do a little bit of refinement here, just a little moving around, and I'm going to go ahead and let's view out a bit. I'm going to introduce where her neck is. So your neck connects with the sides of your jaw and then moves down your body to your main shoulders and chest area. So again, I'm going to kind of just move this down. we're not going to do the whole head, but again, since we have her kind of a three-quarter view, I've got this rotated a bit so that it is showing how it connects to her torso. But I just want to have enough just so that we can kind of do some things to show how other stuff is going to kind of connect with her body and the places that are close to where her head is, so the shoulder, torso, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so let's go ahead and while we're here, let's go ahead and we did that, but let me address the eyes. Let's go ahead and take a look at these eyes and again kind of do a little bit of refinement on these. So I'm going to go ahead and just erase away a little bit, just kind of keep the base idea of this. And so as I said, an eye is kind of a modified oblong ellipse shape. Generally, in a face, your eye is going to be a little bit flatter on the bottom side and a little more round on the top side here. So you can see that as I'm drawing this shape for her eye, a little bit flatter here, a little bit more round here, just to indicate that it's... and I'm going to go ahead and place in the things that really connect. Now, again, like I said, humans are biologically directed to identify things in faces, to identify faces, period, but also to look at things. And so as humans, we are really zeroed in on connecting with eyes. We really like to see a person's eyes, and that's what connects us with a face. So as we're placing stuff in here, what you're going to see is that immediately as I begin to put in the aspects of her eye, the iris and the pupil and things like that, it's really going to zero in on you connecting with, oh, now she's looking at me, or she's not looking at me. And that's really crucial. Eyes are incredibly important, and so the more skilled you can get at how to draw eyes that are able to focus and be directed and not look like they're looking in different directions, that's going to make your faces be more relatable and more connecting for the audience that's looking at them. So again, your eyeball is a sphere that is inside your skull, and it is viewable through this opening in the skin on the front of your face, your eyelids, top and bottom. So they are a slit. So as we're looking at this eye, her actual eyeball is a circle that is bigger than that opening. So as I'm starting to draw this, unless she has her eyes incredibly wide open, I probably am not going to see the entire iris, which is the color part of your eye, or maybe the pupil, which is the dark opening of your eye. So as I'm drawing this, I'm going to draw her iris as a circle, but I'm not going to necessarily show the entire circle. So this extends past here, but I'm going to go ahead and just draw a portion of that circle, which is partially obscured by her top eyelid and here. And I'm going to do the same thing here. So I've got this eye over here, and because this one's looking over here, I'm going to have her looking at us, but again, draw that bottom part there. So you can see that as soon as I place that in there, as soon as I put that eye in there, you made a reaction of like, oh, wait, now she's looking at me. And so it's really important studying and how to make eyes look realistic to a point, or at least make them operate in a way that conveys how you want them to be looking, is super, super essential and something that's absolutely worth your time to put into trial and error, seeing how you can make it work, what doesn't work, taking a look at other tutorials. I look at drawing eyes, but I've studied tons of other people. And the same thing is if we're doing comic art here, part of the idea also is learning how to draw things in a way that is done with as economically as possible, meaning that can you draw this eye with the fewest amount of lines? So that it's not overly complicated, so that it doesn't have every single line, every single tiny detail, because it's going to make those eyes look clunky and kind of clogged up. And especially with comic characters, if you can do it in 3 or 4 elegant lines rather than 20 or 30 cross-hatched and over detailed lines, you're going to have a better looking drawing. It's going to be something that's going to have a cleaner look to it. So in the same way, like when I do, I'm going to give her some eyelashes here. I'm not going to draw every eyelash. I'm going to kind of zero in on that eye being a little bit more, a little cleaner. Generally, let's just erase away some extra details here. So again, as I'm taking a look at this eye, we've got the iris. And again, that top lid is going to obscure some of it. And that comes down here. And then the bottom, this line, I usually indicate this line a little smoother. I'll tend to make, on female characters, I'll tend to make the top lid a little bit more defined, but not really worry about it being too much. And again, your eye kind of comes here, and this bottom part kind of folds in. So depending on the shape of the eye that you're doing, let's go ahead and do a little bit of clean up over here on this eye. I'm going to kind of redraw this a little bit cleaner over here. Again, we can see sort of the starting point. So again, I'll start out with the top part of her eye, bottom part, far away, kind of make that bottom part there. Because of the turn of her head, we're going to see even less of this eye here. So again, heavier top part. And because of her glasses are going to fall kind of like if you're looking at my face, where my eyebrows are kind of at the top of my glasses. If I raise my eyebrows, you can see them above, but just on kind of a resting pose. Her eyebrows are going to be maybe a tiny bit above her glasses, so they're not going to exactly mimic, but just a little bit above. Yeah. So while we're in the neighborhood here, let's take a look at the nose and do a little bit of cleanup on this. So again, we've got our base idea of having a nose, and again, I'm going to just sort of break away a little bit of the guidelines that I have, so I can go in and do a little bit smoother. So again, the crest of her nose, the main ridge comes down. And then that nostril is going to come to the side. And again, if she has a little bit of a broader nose across the front, your character might have like a very slender, very thin nose that comes to more of a shaped point. Simone's nose is a little bit flatter on the front, and the nostrils just kind of blend out from that. But there's still shapes and forms. So the key to drawing faces, especially like a younger person's face or a female face, is to again to accomplish things with as few lines as possible. The more lines that you have in a human face, it's going to tend to make it look more weathered or older. But a youthful face is going to have less lines, less creases, a little bit more of a smooth feel to it. So again, it determines, it's not saying that you can't put lines on a face, but understand that if you're trying to make a character that's a certain age, adding lines is going to make that look older or more, again, weathered, more like somebody who's, had a harder time or more, had been injured or scars or whatever. So again, economy of line, putting down a few well-placed lines are going to make it so that it's easier for you to see stuff, but don't worry too much about trying to absolutely um, articulate every single line. So I'm going to contour the mouth just a little bit. And again, generally, a person's lips, when they come to the center, they have a little bit of a dip right there. So again, you can see that I kind of dip that down. I'm going to make her bottom lip a little bit fuller, kind of make that connect up. There. So again, as we're taking a look at this volumetrically, the same thing is that you can see that I've got a few lines here. If I'm tracing kind of like a contour line, you can see that the lines that I'm doing are following the contour of the nose, but I don't want to have that line there, so I'll go ahead and just undo that. That where I do have lines, if I have like the side of her nose that's up here that might have a line, or a small line that indicates the edge of a nostril, that those shapes are indicating that form, that shape on the nose. And the same thing with the lips here is that the volume of these lips, there's going to be a slight contour here, but I don't put those in. Again, that makes those lips look like they're striated or kind of chapped or not smooth. And I just want to, again, kind of get things done with the least amount of lines possible, the less, the fewest lines possible, just a few well-placed lines get the job done. That's a good general rule of thumb for anything. Because when you begin to clog stuff up, then it just becomes convoluted. And so I have way more respect for artists who can take a look at stuff and can get something accomplished with one or two well-placed lines rather than a ton of unnecessary lines. So, yeah, as we're talking about things here, again, I wanted to have her shoulders because I wanted to be able to show on this side, again, how her hair falls down. Some of it goes to the back, maybe a few strands, a few of the braids come along the front here. Yeah. And again, they're following the logic of, they are following gravity. They are following the fact that they are coming down off of her head, but then when they encounter her shoulders, or where they lay across her shoulders, they change direction. So again, this comes down, comes out of her head, falls down because of gravity, but then as it hits her shoulder or whatever, it changes direction. So depending on how you're, and again, you can stylistically, I mean, you could have these kinds of braids or dreads, could be up and flying around. It depends on what you want to do. But from a naturalistic standpoint, hair comes out of the head and then is affected by gravity, or unless you've got a bunch of hair gel, comes out of the head and goes in crazy directions because you've put a lot of hair gel in it. So yeah, we're sort of, just kind of, like I said, I'm just kind of like modifying some stuff here. Same thing, I want to just kind of modify that scarf, maybe make the decision to show a little bit more of those top braids. So maybe add that back in. I kind of, yeah. And I think because of how she's got it pulled back here, I think probably that I'll have it that she's got this pulled back. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of refinement on the ear there. And ears are all kinds of different shapes. So take a look at reference photos. See the different shapes of people. Some people have very large top ears and tiny bottoms of the ears. Some people have really pronounced ears that stick out from their head. Some people have very tiny ears that kind of follow the contour of the head back. So Simone just kind of has just normal ear. So again, take a look at the shapes of people's ears, the contour of how those ears kind of fold in. Ears they're all different, but they have some basic, kind of like some basic structural things that. So, like I said, her headband would sort of be tying behind her ear and going behind her head. So. Just gonna a little clean up here. And she always wore a single earring here. So again, this is another extrusion where if I drew the shape here and then kind of, extruded that shape. The interesting thing that I always find too, again, is that with having the idea of working very minimally, let's take a look at the mouth. So if I take the edges off that mouth, it looks like she's got kind of a serious face, just sort of a kind of a resting mouth that isn't really, it's not happy or sad or angry, it's just kind of a neutral. But look at the difference here, that if I, again, just by placing a small little hook on the end of that mouth there, it completely changes that that expression. So again, the idea behind the artist that I emulate and that I really respect is that by using the fewest lines possible, it means that each of those lines is more important, and that you can get a ton of really amazing detail and stuff like that out of just a few well-placed lines. All right. So yeah. So I think, I mean, we've got a basic layout of Simone's face here. Obviously, like this would be something that we would go in and do some refinement on with inking, which probably is going to be the next video that you see. Is going to be, I will probably be going in and doing a little bit more refinement and inking this. Picking out the best lines, picking out the quality of lines that we address to this, so that it has a feel that we want. But yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I think it has the right amount of details. Just put a little design on her headscarf there, just enough to kind of just to indicate to myself that I've got something that I want to kind of put on there later. I'll figure that out further in the design process. So again, just she has like a t-shirt on, so to sort of put the neck of that, showing the muscles of her neck and throat going down here, connecting with her clavicle, with her collarbone. Yeah. So I think that looks pretty. That looks pretty good. So once again, we went through. We started out with very simple shapes. We went around and blocked those shapes off, kind of set down guidelines to be able to land things where we wanted to land them. We were able to do things to help proportion those shapes, to move them, to have them in relationship to one another, to be able to alter them so that they had a feel that we wanted, that they had the form that we wanted, that they had the amount of detail that we wanted. We did things that mapped the shapes around the skull that they were reacting to, so that hair was wrapping around the skull, that eyes, nose, and mouth were looking like they were following the contour of the face, not just flat on there like Mr. Potato Head. That we put the glasses on so that they look like they are in the same perspective as the front face of the front plane of the face. Extruding these shapes so that these lines that indicated her hair, her dreadlocks, then became dimensional shapes, dimensional forms. And we'll go from there. So yeah. So I think that's a good stopping point for today. What I would say your assignment for after watching this tutorial is, if you drew along with this, try and make a face. If you want to try and copy this face of Simone, go for that. Or if you want to just kind of start out and make your own face that you want to have, then you can go ahead and try that out and see what facial features, what expressions, what qualities you want to have on that face, and kind of go from there. So, yeah, I think that's all from Sizer Design and Illustration today. So thank you for watching. Again, if you have questions, if you have questions about what I've done or something that I've shown you here, feel free to ask in the comments or by email. And I'll be back next time with a little bit more refinement of this. We're going to take this drawing here and we're going to go to the next step with that. So thank you for watching. Draw every day, draw cool stuff, and I will see you soon. All right? Thanks very much. Talk to you later.